Have you ever sacrificed everything for family, only to be betrayed by the very people you loved? If that question hits close to home, you need to hear today's story. Like, subscribe to D Daily Stories and drop a comment once you've listened. On Father's Day, a neatly wrapped gift box arrived at our doorstep. It had no return label, just a simple card that read, "To Dad, with love." I was touched, surprised even, thinking for a moment that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. That perhaps my daughter had remembered me not for my wallet, but for who I was. I picked up the box and turned to my wife. Her eyes scanned the packaging, and suddenly her expression shifted. She leaned in close, her voice a whisper that carried the weight of dread. "Don't open it!" I stared at her, confused. "Why not? What are you seeing?" I asked, already peeling at the tape. She didn't answer, just backed away, her face pale. I looked closer and froze. 10 minutes later, the shrill sound of sirens pierced the air. Police swarmed our porch. You won't believe what they found inside that box. Before we go on, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments. Where are you tuning in from? Now, back to the story. It had started just a few days earlier, the argument that changed everything. "Dad, do you even understand that I need the money now, not after you're gone?" Her voice cracked like a whip across the room. The coffee mug slipped from Samantha's hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. Dark coffee splattered across the Persian rug, a gift from my late mother, like spilled blood. Her carefully polished nails trembled. My heart clenched. I held the inheritance documents in my hand. 30 years of methodical planning, sacrifice, and quiet saving, now reduced to little more than leverage in a power play. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the folder tighter. "Samantha," I said, struggling to steady my voice, "I'm not an ATM. You'll get your inheritance when the time is right." Peter, her husband, was stretched out on our leather couch like he owned it, one leg draped over the armrest. He smirked and chuckled without shame. "Come on, Will, she's your only daughter. What's a few $1,000s to help us out?" A few thousand, he said it like it was pocket change. Last month, it had been poker debts. The month before that, it was a luxury cruise. The month before that, Samantha's designer shopping sprees. There was always another emergency, another excuse. I rose to my feet slowly, the years weighing on my joints. "I've helped you out for 3 years straight," I said, voice low but firm. "My retirement savings are not your personal slush fund." Jessica appeared in the doorway, a dish towel twisting between her hands. Her eyes flitted from me to our daughter, to Peter. "Please, everyone just calm down. Can't we talk about this like adults?" "Talk reasonably?" Samantha snapped, whirling around to her mother. "He's hoarding hundreds of thousands while we're drowning in debt." "Debt you created," I said softly. "Debt from your choices." The room fell quiet except for the sound of the ceiling fan and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. The family photo on the mantel had been knocked face down. Had it fallen during the argument, or had someone turned it intentionally? The silver frame caught the overhead light, glinting cold and empty like a mirror with no reflection. Peter leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his tone turning darker. "Look, old man, you're not getting any younger. Why not spread the wealth while you're still alive to enjoy it? Or do you plan to take it to the grave with you?" "Old man." The words hit like a slap. The disrespect stung more than the demand itself. I swallowed hard, but the bitterness stayed lodged in my throat. They saw me not as a father, not as a husband or man, but as a bank account with a beating heart. And that was before the box arrived. This, from someone who never held a steady dough, a man who lived off my daughter's credit cards and off the scraps of my occasional generosity. I had worked 43 years for that money, and now every word I said felt heavier, harder, as if I were pushing against the weight of my entire past. 43 years of waking up before sunrise, 43 years of 12-hour shifts, of missed dinners, of birthdays I didn't get to celebrate, of vacations we never took. All so my daughter could grow up in comfort. So Samantha could go to good schools, wear clean clothes, eat warm meals. So her mother and I, after decades of sacrifice, could finally retire with a shred of dignity. And then she laughed, a cold, bitter laugh that cut through the room like a knife. Dignity? She scoffed. What's dignified about hoarding money while your own daughter is suffering? Suffering? I glanced at the designer handbag draped over her shoulder, at her freshly colored hair, still glossy from the salon, at the diamond earrings glinting under the light, and at Peter's brand new sneakers, still spotless. Their suffering looked suspiciously comfortable. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Your suffering is self-inflicted. Silence followed, thick, stretching between us like a wire pulled taut. Even the ticking clock on the mantel seemed to pause. Jessica stepped all the way into the room then. She looked pale, her hands wringing the hem of her blouse as if trying to hold something in. A plea, maybe, or fear. William, she whispered, maybe we should... Should what? Samantha's voice snapped like shattered glass. Should keep enabling your selfishness? Should keep pretending you're a loving father instead of a greedy miser? The words hit me like stones hurled from close range. Greedy, selfish, unloving. 43 years of loyalty, of duty, of sacrifice. And this was my reward. Peter pushed himself up from the couch then, slowly, deliberately. His face hardened into something colder, something meaner. You know what I think, Will? He said, stepping closer. I think you like this. I think you enjoy watching us struggle. Makes you feel important, doesn't it? Makes you feel like the king on the hill while we beg at your feet. I stared at him, at both of them, and suddenly something shifted inside me. The anger didn't explode. It burned slow from deep in my chest and rose to my throat like smoke. The voice that came out wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Get out, the room stilled. Both of you, I said, quieter but clearer than before. Get out of my house. Samantha's eyes narrowed, her voice now laced with venom. Your house? She hissed. This house that Mom helped pay for? And just like that, all pretense was gone. They weren't here for love. They weren't here for family. They were here for the spoils, and they expected me to hand them over. No questions asked. But not anymore. Not today. This is my house, I said. The house where I grew up, Samantha snapped back, defiant. You can't just kick your own daughter out. I looked her dead in the eyes. Watch me. But she didn't move, neither did Peter. They stood there shoulder to shoulder, like predators who had just caught the scent of weakness. They weren't shocked. They weren't ashamed. They were waiting for the usual pattern. For me to back down, for the sigh, for the forced smile, for the same old apology, the same old compromise. For the check, always the check, written just to buy another week of fake peace, but not this time. I turned and walked to the front door. My legs felt heavier than they should, but they kept moving. I opened it wide. A gust of cool evening air swept into the house, crisp and clean, scented faintly with honeysuckle. From down the street, I could hear the faint laughter of neighbors gathered on a porch, sharing stories, living out the kind of peaceful, ordinary evening I used to dream of. How long had it been since we'd laughed like that? As a family, as human beings? I didn't turn around when I spoke. Samantha, I said calmly, take your husband and leave. Don't come back until you're ready to have a respectful conversation about your finances, your responsibilities, and your solutions. And none of those solutions should involve my wallet. There was a pause, then came the hiss, low, venomous. You'll regret this, she said, snatching her purse from the couch. One day you'll be old and sick, alone, and you'll need someone to take care of you. Remember this moment, Dad. Remember how you chose money over your own family. Her heels struck the floor like gunshots as she stormed toward the door, each step echoing off the walls, sharp and final. Peter followed, but at the threshold, he turned. His eyes glinted with something colder now. Pride wounded, ego bruised. This isn't over, old man, he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. Family doesn't abandon family. And then the door slammed behind them. Hard. So hard the window panes trembled in their frames. The silence they left behind felt heavier than the shouting ever had. I stood there frozen, my fingers still gripping the brass handle of the front door. Through the frosted glass panels, I watched their BMW lurch backward down the driveway, tires shrieking as they spun on the pavement. Red taillights glared like eyes in the dark, and then they were gone. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps approach. Jessica. Her presence was quiet but grounding. "William," she said gently. I turned around slowly. The living room looked like the aftermath of a storm. Coffee stains bloomed dark across the Persian rug, the same one we bought for our 20th anniversary. The inheritance documents lay scattered across the floor, pages curling like fallen leaves. And the family photo, the one that had sat on our mantle for years, was still face down, the silver frame catching the lamplight, glinting like it was mocking me. I stared at it, my voice barely a whisper. 43 years. "What?" Jessica asked quietly. I took a shaky breath. 43 years I worked overtime. Nights, weekends, double shifts during Samantha's high school years. So she could have new clothes, so she could buy her textbooks, so she could drive that little car on her 16th birthday. My voice cracked. The wedding we couldn't afford, but paid for anyway, because she asked. I felt Jessica's hand on my arm, but I wasn't done. Every sacrifice we made was so she could feel safe, secure, loved, and now I trailed off, staring at the broken calm of the room. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was something deeper, a fracture that had always been there, now finally visible. Jessica bent down and began picking up the scattered documents. Her movements were slow, careful, as if each sheet of paper carried the weight of the moment. She spoke without looking up. "She's struggling, William." The words sat there, delicate and hesitant, but I couldn't let them pass. "The gambling problem is her choice," I said, sharper than I intended. Jessica flinched slightly, but I continued. "Every casino visit, every online bet, every lie about where the money went, all her choices." I turned away and walked slowly toward the fireplace, where the photo still lay face down on the mantel. I picked it up and set it upright again. There she was, 5-year-old Samantha, gap-toothed and smiling, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair, her tiny hands gripping my forehead, her laughter frozen in time. When had that joyful child become this manipulative stranger? A stranger who now looked me in the eye and demanded my life savings, like it was owed to her. I brushed my thumb along the glass. "Remember when she wanted that dollhouse for Christmas?" I asked softly. "The one from that expensive toy store downtown?" Jessica didn't respond. She didn't need to. We both remembered, just like we remembered the ballet lessons, the summer camps, the name-brand shoes because her friends all had them. Every moment when her wants became our mission, every sacrifice made, not reluctantly, but gladly behind her, because her happiness mattered more than our comfort. And now here we were. Now she threw coffee mugs at me because I wouldn't hand over my retirement fund. Jessica spoke up again. "She didn't throw it at you, William. She threw it at the floor." I turned to look at her. "Does it matter?" I asked. The distinction felt meaningless. The violence was the same, whether it shattered at my feet or struck my face. The disrespect was identical. I bent down and picked up one of the inheritance documents, smoothing the crumpled edges between my fingers. The legal language blurred slightly under the lamplight, but I didn't need to read it. I knew it by heart. Years of conservative planning, sacrificed vacations, delayed gratification, carefully structured investments and savings. All so that one day, when we were gone, Samantha would be financially secure. Jessica sat quietly on the edge of the couch. Her voice came low. "Peter's influence," she murmured. "He fills her head with these ideas about what we owe her, about what she deserves." I shook my head. Peter didn't create her greed. He just gave it permission to speak. The words landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. The truth was harsh, but undeniable. Our daughter hadn't turned into someone else overnight. She'd grown into this version slowly, over years. And we had helped shape her by never saying no, by smoothing every sharp edge with money, by turning emergencies into solvable transactions, by always writing the check. We didn't teach her to face consequences. We taught her that love looked like a paid bill. My phone buzzed on the side table. A new text message. The number wasn't saved, but I didn't need to see the name. The writing style was unmistakable. "Dad, I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen. No punctuation, no context, just accusation. And maybe, in her mind, I deserved it. But I had spent 43 years earning the right to protect my peace. And tonight, I chose peace. The kids need winter coats and school supplies. But apparently your precious money matters more than your grandchildren. Don't expect to see them anytime soon. That was the PNN, short, weaponized. Grandchildren, the ultimate bargaining chip in Samantha's arsenal. Emma and Jake, 8 and 6 years old, innocent, beautiful. Caught in the middle of a war they never asked to be part of. A war their mother had declared against my wallet. She knew exactly where to strike, where it would hurt most. She didn't need to yell anymore. She had found the pressure point that never failed, the threat of silence, of absence, of withheld hugs and empty chairs at Sunday dinner. I handed the phone to Jessica. She read the message slowly. Her expression collapsed. Her voice was small, uncertain. She wouldn't really keep them away from us, would she? But we both knew the answer. She would. She had. There had been smaller arguments before, over less money, less tension, less resentment. And every time we resisted, even slightly, there had been consequences. A week of no contact, 2 weeks without FaceTime calls, no photos, no updates, no birthday invites. Emma and Jake, beautiful, bright children, used like leverage, like currency. "William, maybe we should reconsider." Jessica's voice trembled. "No." The word came out like a gunshot. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. But the impact was immediate. Jessica flinched. "No more," I said firmly. "I will not be held hostage by emotional blackmail. Not again. I won't teach Emma and Jake that love is a tool, that family is a transaction." It wasn't just anger in my voice. It was something deeper, something final. In 38 years of marriage, Jessica had seen me upset. She had seen me disappointed. She had even seen me cry. But she had rarely seen this version of me, the man who had finally drawn the line. Tonight had changed something. The illusion of unconditional love, of one-sided sacrifice had shattered, as thoroughly as that coffee mug on the hardwood floor. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. 6 days later, Father's Day. I sat alone on the front porch trying to stitch together some sense of normalcy. The Sunday paper lay in my lap, pages mostly untouched. The coffee in my mug had long gone cold, but I held it anyway, more for habit than warmth. Across the street, the neighborhood moved through its morning routines. The Hendersons were loading their SUV, coolers, baignoires, a beach umbrella, off on a cheerful family outing. The Patels were in their garden again, their laughter light and unbothered as they pulled weeds and watered roses. Normal families, normal problems. Inside, Jessica moved quietly around the kitchen. The clinking of dishes, the scrape of a chair, the low hum of the refrigerator. Life, in its most mundane, comforting form, was still happening. We hadn't spoken much about that night, not directly. We danced around it all week, careful with our words, avoiding the places that still hurt to touch. There had been no calls, no texts, no surprise visits, no teary apologies, no dramatic demands for reconciliation. Just silence. The kind that didn't heal, only reminded you of the ache. And still, even with the stillness pressing in around us, I didn't regret saying no. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally protecting something that needed to be protected. My peace, my dignity, and maybe, just maybe, the kind of legacy worth leaving behind. The silence was beginning to feel unnatural. In 3 years of financial crisis, 3 years of last-minute calls, late-night texts, and emergency wire transfers, Samantha had never gone this long without contact. Usually by day 3, she'd be on the phone, starting with soft apologies, then testing the waters with smaller requests. A grocery bill, a missed credit card payment, some innocent-sounding plea, carefully packaged to seem reasonable, just enough to open the door before the next storm hit. But this time was different. The silence wasn't a pause, it was intentional, measured. It had the stillness of someone who wasn't retreating, but repositioning. It felt like the calm before a storm. Part of me felt relieved. The quiet was a reprieve. The emotional battlefield had been still for nearly a week, and I wasn't constantly on edge, waiting for the next guilt trip. But another part of me, the deeper, older part, felt something else. Worried. The low rumble of an engine pulled me from my thoughts. A brown UPS truck coasted to a slow stop in front of our house. I looked up from the sports section of the Sunday paper, frowning. Strange, we weren't expecting anything. And Sunday deliveries were rare, unless someone had paid extra for weekend service. The driver stepped out with practiced efficiency, glancing at his handheld scanner before retrieving a medium-sized box from the back. He moved like someone working holiday overtime, brisk but polite. "William Carr? That's me. Happy Father's Day," he said, handing over the package along with an electronic clipboard. "Someone must think highly of you to pay for Sunday delivery." I signed without speaking, my eyes already on the box. No gift note, no card, no return address, just a printed shipping label with generic routing information. The package felt oddly light, too light for its fun. Roughly the dimensions of a shoebox, but weighing no more than 2 pounds, if that. Jessica's voice called from the kitchen doorway. "Who's that from?" She was drying her hands with a dish towel, eyes squinting toward the front room. "No idea." I brought the box inside and set it on the coffee table. The same table where inheritance documents had lain just 6 days earlier, scattered like the ruins of trust. Jessica followed, her footsteps careful. "No return address?" She leaned in to examine the label. Her tone was curious but cautious. Jessica had always been more skeptical of unexpected deliveries than I was. Years of watching news stories about package bombs, identity theft, mail scams, they'd made her wary. "Maybe it's from the grandchildren," she offered. But even as she said it, her voice lacked conviction. Emma had asked about Father's Day when we saw them last month, back before Samantha started using them as leverage, before the veiled threats and open ultimatums, back when we still had hope that maybe, just maybe, we could all sit at the same table again. "Could be HD," I said, though something felt off. The timing, the delivery, the silence that preceded it. And Emma wouldn't have arranged for special Sunday delivery. She was 8. She drew cards and used glitter. She didn't use UPS Premium. Jessica leaned in further, studying the box with the quiet intensity she brought to everything, whether balancing the grocery list or solving a crossword puzzle. Her fingers traced the edges of the shipping label. Then she froze. "William," she said slowly, "don't open it." I looked at her, confused. "Why, Maui?" She pointed to the side of the box, a place I hadn't looked at carefully. "Can't you see them?" She turned the box slightly, revealing a small cluster of pin-sized holes along the edge. I leaned in. Air holes, breathing holes, the kind you only punch into a package if something alive is inside. My stomach dropped. Now that she'd pointed them out, I could see them. Tiny punctures in the cardboard, almost invisible at first glance. But there they were. Small, precise holes, no more than a few millimeters wide, spaced evenly like the marks from a deliberate, careful hand. "Breathing holes," I repeated, my voice flat. Jessica nodded. "Something's alive in there." She backed away from the coffee table, instinctively putting distance between herself and the box. I didn't move. Not yet. We stood in our own living room, staring at a simple brown package like it was a bomb ready to detonate. The sunlight pouring through the window suddenly felt harsh, like a spotlight we hadn't agreed to stand in. The quiet hum of the neighborhood, lawn sprinklers, a dog barking a few houses down, now felt wrong. Too peaceful. Too normal. "Who would send us something alive?" Jessica whispered, but I didn't answer, because I already knew. The silence, the timing, the lack of a return address, the Sunday delivery, paid in full to guarantee we'd be home. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a gift. It was a message, one Samantha hadn't needed to speak aloud. And then it moved. Just a sound, soft, barely audible, but real, a faint rustling, like something shifting its weight inside a cardboard coffin. We both froze. The sound stopped just as quickly as it had started, leaving a silence so complete it felt like a trap. Jessica grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into the skin through my cotton polo. "Did you hear that?" she breathed. I nodded, afraid to open my mouth, afraid to let the thought form into words. Whatever was in that box was very much alive, and it was waking up. Then came another sound, faint but unmistakable. A hiss, barely audible, but real, so real. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up like they were responding to something ancient, something buried in the oldest parts of the human brain. Danger, predator. We both stared at the box, unmoving, as if it might grow legs and leap at us. The sound stopped. Silence again, thick, oppressive, stretching between us like a held breath. Then it came again, longer this time, a drawn-out hiss that raised goosebumps across my arms and chest. Jessica's grip tightened. Her nails bit through fabric and into my skin. "William," she whispered, barely more than breath. "Call someone. Now." I reached for my phone with shaking hands, fingers fumbling against the screen. Muscle memory took over where reason had begun to falter. 911. The digits felt distant, like I was watching myself from far away. 911, what's your emergency? "We have a suspicious package," I said, my voice stumbling to catch up with my thoughts. "It was delivered this morning, no return address. It's making sounds." "Sir, can you describe the sounds?" I glanced at Jessica. She nodded quickly, her face pale but focused. The hissing had stopped again, as if the thing inside could hear us talking. "Hissing," I said, like... I couldn't finish the sentence. Like a snake. Just thinking the word felt dangerous, like giving it power. "Are there any visible threats or damage to the package?" No damage, but..." My voice cracked. "There are small holes in the cardboard, breathing holes." The dispatcher's voice shifted, quicker, more alert. "Sir, I'm dispatching officers to your location now. Please maintain a safe distance from the package and do not attempt to open it. Can you move to another room?" "We're about 6 feet away in the living room." "Should we leave the house?" "No, stay inside but keep your distance. Do not touch or move the package under any circumstances. Officers will arrive within 10 minutes. 10 minutes. It might as well have been a year. The line went quiet except for the faint clack of the dispatcher's keyboard. 10 minutes. 10 minutes had never felt so long. Not when something dangerous, maybe deadly, sat on our coffee table getting louder, more alive. Jessica's voice broke the silence. "Who could have done this?" "William." The question I'd been avoiding, the one with only one answer. I didn't want to say it, because if I did, I'd never be able to take it back, never be able to unknow it. "I'm afraid to guess," I said quietly. But my brain was already there, tearing through memories and motives I didn't want to examine. Father's Day. Of all the days, the delivery, timed so we'd both be home. No return address, no note, just a box, breathing, waiting. Someone who knew us, knew our routines, our vulnerabilities. Another hiss, followed by a low, uneven rustle, like something adjusting itself inside the box. We both stepped back at the same time. Jessica whispered, "The argument, 6 days ago." I didn't respond. She didn't need to say the name. Samantha. It echoed silently between us. A daughter's name that once meant joy, now tasting like guilt and glass in my mouth. This, I gestured at the box without looking at it. This isn't just anger. Jessica met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw it reflected in her. The same sick realization. This was personal. This was punishment. We didn't say the word, but it hung in the air like smoke. Revenge. Our daughter, the girl we'd raised and forgiven 100 times, had crossed a line I hadn't known she was even capable of seeing. The box rustled again, louder now. Whatever was inside was fully awake, and it was moving. Jessica's voice cracked. What kind of person does this to their own parents? I swallowed. Someone desperate, I said. But I knew it was more than that. This wasn't desperation. It was design. Premeditated. Samantha hadn't snapped. She'd planned, crafted, packaged. This wasn't the act of a daughter lashing out. This was psychological warfare from someone who'd decided we needed to suffer. Maybe for setting boundaries. Maybe for telling her no one last time. I didn't know, but I felt it. That severing in my chest. The invisible string between parent and child. Cut. The sharp slam of car doors outside made us both jump. We turned in unison toward the window. A cruiser was parked in our driveway. 2 officers stepping out, already scanning the scene with trained eyes. Their posture alone brought a wave of relief so strong I nearly dropped to my knees. For the first time in what felt like forever, we weren't alone. Professional help had arrived. And maybe, just maybe, we were going to get through this. Soon, whatever nightmare lurked in that innocent-looking package would be someone else's responsibility. The doorbell rang, sharp, authoritative, slicing through the tense quiet of our home. I opened the door before the man on the porch could knock again. Officer Todd Reeves, his nameplate read T. Reeves, and his presence filled the doorway. Tall, solid, eyes sharp with the kind of alertness that comes from seeing more than you want to remember. "Mr. Carr?" he asked. "I'm Officer Reeves. We received your call about a suspicious package." "Thank you for coming so quickly," I said, stepping aside. "It's in the living room." He wiped his boots on our welcome mat before crossing the threshold. A small gesture, but one that reminded me we were still in our home. Still supposed to feel safe here. Jessica appeared behind me in the hallway, still wearing her apron, hands clenched together, trembling. "Officer, we're just so grateful you're here. We didn't know what else to do." "You did exactly the right thing, ma'am," he said, his voice calm, steady. The kind of voice that made you believe the worst might not happen after all. "Can you show me the package?" We led him to the living room where the box still sat on the coffee table. Funny, it looked smaller now, less like a monster, more like a mystery. Officer Reeves crouched down and pulled on a pair of latex gloves from his utility belt, moving with the caution of someone trained not to make assumptions. "When did this arrive?" "About 35 minutes ago," I replied. "Sunday delivery. Someone paid extra to make sure we'd be home." He eyed the shipping label without touching it, then frowned. "No return address." Jessica swallowed hard. "And the sounds," she started. It was hissing. She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "Like a snake?" Officer Reeves offered, matter of fact. She nodded. "I've handled similar situations before," he said. "Usually non-venomous, but we'll take every precaution." He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47, requesting animal control services at 1247 Maple Street. Suspected snake delivery in a residential package." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Unit 47. Animal control en route, ETA 20 minutes. Reeves clipped the radio back to his shoulder, turning to us again. His tone shifted, still professional, but now more inquisitive. Investigative. "Do you have any idea who might have sent this?" There it was, the question I'd been hoping wouldn't come. I hesitated. Too long. Jessica looked down at the floor. Reeves raised an eyebrow. "We're not here to judge, sir, but if someone sent this intentionally, we need to know who, for everyone's safety." I nodded slowly. "I think it was our daughter," I said, the words tasting like acid. "Samantha." Jessica closed her eyes, a silent flinch of guilt and grief. Reeves didn't look surprised, just focused. "Is she local?" "Yes," I said. "We had a falling out last week. Things got heated." I didn't go into detail, not yet. But Reeves didn't press. He only gave a short nod and jotted something in a small notebook he pulled from his chest pocket. Then the box moved. Not a rustle, not a hiss, a distinct thump. Something heavy shifting inside, brushing against the cardboard with more force than before. Officer Reeves straightened, alert. "We're not opening that," he said firmly. "Not until animal control arrives." But we all stared at the box now, the tension like a held breath. 20 minutes. I wasn't sure we had that long. I felt Jessica's eyes on me, silently begging for me to say something else, to say anything else. I don't know, I lied, carefully, flatly. Probably just some kids, playing pranks. Officer Reeves's gaze sharpened, just enough to say he didn't buy it. Kids, he repeated, would need access to live animals, shipping materials, your home address. This took planning and resources. My mouth went dry. He was right. This wasn't a prank. It was a message sent by someone with means and motive. And it had arrived on Father's Day. Have you had any recent conflicts? Family disagreements? He said it casually, but the words landed like a hammer. Family disagreements. The phrase hung in the air, loaded with implication. Jessica tensed beside me, her shoulders rising with the effort not to speak. We were walking a tightrope, balancing between honesty and loyalty. I forced a shrug. Nothing that would lead to this, I managed. Officer Reeves studied my face, saw the hesitation. But to his credit, he didn't press. Instead, he flipped open a small notepad. Any unusual charges on your credit cards recently? Pet stores, exotic animal suppliers? The words hit me like a slap. Pet stores. The memory crashed down, unwelcome and undeniable. A credit card notification from last month. A $127 charge at a place called Reptile Palace. I'd brushed it off. Thought it was something for the grandkids. A toy, a lizard terrarium, something innocent. But now it looked like a receipt for terror. Samantha, she had access to that card. I'd let her use it for emergencies. She must have thought this qualified. Mr. Carr? Reeves asked. Are you all right? I forced my face back into something neutral, though my heart felt like it was trying to claw out of my chest. I'm fine, I said, just processing. But I wasn't, not even close. The puzzle pieces were fitting together, jagged and cruel. The timing, Father's Day, the method, something alive, something dangerous. The access to our home, to our schedule, to my wallet. The message, impossible to miss. My daughter had sent me a snake. Will you be filing a formal report? Reeves asked. We can investigate the origin of the package, pursue charges if we identify the sender. I turned to Jessica, saw the same storm behind her eyes. Part of me wanted justice, wanted someone to pay for the fear clawing its way through our living room. But another part, the louder part, couldn't do it. Not to her, not to Samantha, the same girl whose first bike I'd assembled on this very rug, whose tears I'd wiped away more times than I could count, the same daughter I'd protected, defended, excused for 34 years. No, I said quietly, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. Reeves raised an eyebrow, made a note anyway. His face said he'd seen it before. Family loyalty outweighing justice, even when family crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. A vehicle pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I saw the logo on the side, Animal Control Services. A white van, doors opening. That'll be Mike Johnson, Reeves said. Best in the county. I nodded, though my hands were cold. Soon the box would be gone. But the damage was already done. Best wildlife specialist in the county, Reeves said confidently. He'll have this resolved safely within the hour. But as I watched Mike Johnson step out of the van, toolbox in hand, and face unreadable beneath his ball cap, I knew deep down the snake might be leaving. But the real danger was just beginning. Mike worked with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd seen it all. Escaped iguanas, basement alligators, tarantulas in lunchboxes. Compared to that, a corn snake in a Father's Day package barely raised an eyebrow. Within 20 minutes, he had the reptile out, calm, unharmed, and very much alive. 3-foot corn snake, Mike said, gently easing it into a secure carrier. Non-venomous, good temperament. Someone paid good money for this one. He looked at me thoughtful. Corn snakes make great pets. When cared for properly, he added, latching the box closed. Shame someone used it for whatever this was. Officer Reeves walked us to the door, offered a firm handshake. Call if you remember anything else, Mr. Carr, even pranks like this. can escalate if left unchecked. I nodded, wearing the mask of polite concern, but inside my thoughts were a boiling storm of recognition, rage, and regret. Both vehicles pulled away from the curb, disappearing down our peaceful tree-lined street. And then, there was silence. The living room felt different now, like it had been contaminated, violated by something deeper than just a snake. The coffee table still bore faint disinfectant stains, reminders of what had been pulled from that unassuming box. And the documents, the will, the estate papers, they sat in a neat pile again. But now they didn't feel like paperwork. They felt like evidence, like the match that lit the fuse. Jessica moved restlessly in the kitchen, the water from the faucet running louder than necessary. Stress cleaning, her coping mechanism since the first time Samantha dropped out of college, since the second. I didn't join her. I stood at the front window, watching the Hendersons come home from their Father's Day picnic. Their SUV was packed with coolers, blankets, paper plates, and children's laughter. Normal families, normal mornings, normal daughters, who didn't mail reptiles to prove a point. The memory returned, sharp and searing. Reptile Palace, 12750. 3 weeks ago, right after the argument, right after I said no for the last time about the inheritance, right before the threat started. If you keep playing favorites, don't expect to see your grandkids again. Her words had felt manipulative then. Now they felt dangerous. My phone buzzed faintly in my palm. I scrolled to her contact. Samantha's smiling face looked back at me. A photo from Emma's birthday party. Before the financial demands. Before the veiled threats. Before the snake. Are you really going to call her? Jessica's voice came quietly from the kitchen doorway. I didn't turn. I need to know for certain. She stepped forward, drying her hands on a towel. And if she admits it? The question hung there, sharp, aching, and real. What does a father do when his daughter crosses that line? Not just a bad decision, not just selfishness, but premeditated cruelty. A message wrapped in cardboard and venom. I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This conversation was no longer optional. It was inevitable, and maybe irreversible. The phone rang twice, then she picked up. Dad! Samantha's voice sparkled with artificial cheer, the kind of brightness she used when she was hiding something, or wanted something. How's your Father's Day going? My grip tightened around the phone. That question. If she were innocent, it was a casual greeting. If she were guilty, it was a cruel little joke. I kept my voice even, conversational. Interesting morning, actually. A pause. Samantha, you wouldn't happen to know anything about a strange gift that showed up at my house today? No, Dad. What happened? Her response was fast, too fast, but it wasn't her words that shattered everything. It was what came next, in the background, faint but clear. Peter's laugh, not surprised, not confused, not a "what's going on" kind of laugh. No, it was smug, quiet, satisfied. The sound of someone who thought they'd pulled off something clever and couldn't resist enjoying the punchline. It hit me like a punch to the chest. That laugh told the truth. My daughter had sent me a live snake on Father's Day, and her husband thought it was hilarious. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat. Just a delivery mix-up, I said. Flat, distant, controlled. Nothing important. I should let you go. Are you sure? You sound strange. Strange, I was standing in the ruins of what used to be trust, and she was asking me why I sounded different. Everything's fine, Samantha. Enjoy your Sunday. I ended the call before she could respond, before my voice cracked, before rage or grief or disbelief could spill through the seams I was barely holding shut. The phone trembled in my hand, not from fear, from fury, from betrayal, from the realization that this wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Jessica appeared beside me. No words, just that knowing look. 38 years of marriage. She could read my face before I even opened my mouth. You heard something? I nodded once. Peter laughed. 3 syllables. That's all it took. Her hand touched my arm, grounding me, steadying me, but nothing felt steady anymore. Not the room, not the world, certainly not our family. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. I looked down at the phone, then toward my office, where years of financial support lived. Bank logins, credit cards, trust accounts, all the lifelines I had extended to the daughter who just mailed me a venomous message wrapped in cardboard. "I'm going to teach my daughter about consequences." 7 o'clock. I sat alone in my home office, door shut, the soft hum of the computer, the only sound in the stillness. The afternoon had been spent walking the neighborhood in silence, each step replaying 3 decades of decisions that had led me here. The anger had cooled, distilled into something colder, more precise, purposeful. The desk before me was a graveyard of enabling. Stacks of bank statements, transfers to cover Samantha's rent, credit card bills I'd paid without asking questions, insurance premiums, car payments, emergency loans, all unrepaid, all forgiven, all proof of a father mistaking financial rescue for love. Beside my keyboard sat a worn leather portfolio. Inside, copies of checks from her wedding, receipts from the car sold to pay her gambling debts, bank transfers labeled emergency assistance that had somehow become monthly expectations. Every sheet of paper whispered the same quiet truth. She hadn't needed a father. She'd needed a financier. And I had complied again and again, calling it support. The computer screen glowed softly as I opened the online banking portal. My fingers moved with steady familiarity. Passwords I'd memorized years ago. Passwords I never shared. Though somehow, Samantha had always known how to access what she needed. First, the credit card. The same one that bore the Reptile Palace charge from 3 weeks ago. She was still listed as an authorized user, a status I'd given her in college, for emergencies. That emergency had lasted 20 years. I clicked Manage Users. The system asked security questions. My mother's maiden name, the street where I'd grown up. Easy answers. Answers that unlocked a choice I should have made a decade ago. Remove authorized user? The screen displayed the prompt in calm blue text. My cursor hovered it over confirm, not out of doubt, but because something inside me was shifting. Seismic, irreversible. 30 years of rescue missions, 30 years of blind trust, 30 years of calling indulgence love. Enough. Click. User access revoked. Changes will take effect within 1 business hour. Next came the PIN. Somehow she'd learned it. Maybe she'd watched me enter it during one of those late-night crises, probably while crying, begging. I changed it to the year Jessica and I were married. A number that meant something real, something solid, something Samantha had never tried to exploit. Then came the automated payments. Monthly transfers to her checking account, car insurance, a gym subscription she claimed to help her mental health. I'd paid it even when I knew she never went. Each cancellation came with a soft chime. Each chime, a quiet revolution. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was accountability. Overdue. Necessary. Final. My hands didn't shake. Not once, because this time there would be no last time, no more calls, no more rescues, just the long, deliberate work of undoing a lifetime of misplaced generosity. I'd believed her, again, transferred another $5,000, told Jessica we were helping our daughter learn responsibility. But what I'd actually been teaching was far more dangerous, that consequences were optional. The final screen on my computer displayed a quiet summary: credit access, revoked automatic payments, canceled PIN codes, updated 30 years of financial enabling, undone in 30 minutes of deliberate, methodical clicking. Save changes. Outside my office window, life went on. The Hendersons were grilling dinner. Mrs. Patterson strolled by with her yappy little dog. Ordinary lives, ordinary families, probably not dealing with adult children who sent live snakes as Father's Day gifts. I clicked save. A soft chime, a brief message, account changes processed, updated information available immediately. Leaning back in my chair, I felt something unexpected. Control. Not the frantic, guilty kind that came from scrambling to fix her messes. Not the panic triage of another debt, another broken promise, but calm, earned authority. The quiet strength of a parent finally remembering that sometimes love means saying no. Tomorrow she'd discover the truth. The safety net she'd mistaken for permanence, gone. Her credit card, declined. Her automatic payments, rejected. Her invisible tether to my accounts, severed. And for the first time in her adult life, every single consequence would belong to her. Alone. The phone sat silent on my desk, but I knew it wouldn't last. Morning came peacefully. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and the newspaper, watching sunlight filter through Jessica's little herb garden. No dread, no mental math calculating how much I'd need to shift between accounts. No waiting for the next emotionally charged plea dressed up as crisis. Jessica moved through the kitchen with the quiet efficiency of 38 years of shared mornings. She didn't ask what I'd done the night before. She didn't need to. Her slight smile as she poured my second cup said it all. She knew, and she approved. 8:15 a.m. The phone rang. Samantha's name lit up the screen. Right on schedule. I let it ring twice more. Just enough time to breathe, to center myself. Then I answered, "Good morning, Samantha." Her voice struck like a slap, sharp, panicked, and already accusing. "Dad, what have you done? My card isn't working. I tried to buy groceries and it was declined. The car insurance payment bounced. What is happening?" I took a slow sip of coffee before responding. "Samantha, I know you sent me that Father's Day gift." The silence on the line stretched, thick, loaded. Then her voice came back, different now. Not panicked, but venomous. "You've lost your mind. How could you set me up like this?" Set her up, not what are you talking about? Not what gift. The woman who'd mailed me a live snake was now playing the victim because I'd finally stopped being her willing mark. "I didn't do anything," I said evenly. "I simply stopped paying for your irresponsibility." She exploded. "This is insane. You can't just cut me off without warning. I have bills, obligations, responsibilities." That word, I let it hang there. Heavy. Like the responsibility to treat your parents with basic respect? Like the responsibility to handle your own finances instead of depending on mine? Jessica had paused across the kitchen, mug in hand, watching my face, searching for stress. But there was none, only calm, resolved. "Dad, please, you don't understand. Peter and I are struggling. The rent's due and my car payment." "Your car payment," I interrupted, "that I've been making for 2 years. Your apartment rent that I've paid every month without fail. Maybe it's time you understood what actual financial responsibility looks like." A pause, then the mask dropped. Her voice rose to a shriek. "Fine, you want to play games? Don't expect to see your grandchildren anytime soon. Emma and Jake won't even remember you by the time—" "Samantha," I cut in, quiet, firm. Those threats stopped working yesterday. The line went still, except for her breathing, fast, shallow. I could almost hear her recalibrating, grasping for a new angle, a new emotional lever to pull. "I can't believe you're doing this to me," she whispered. There it was, the wounded voice, the practiced trembling tone that had opened my wallet so many times before. "I'm your daughter. I'm struggling, and instead of helping me, you're punishing me for something I didn't even do." Something she didn't even do. Still no denial, no confusion, just blanket deflection. The signature move of someone who knew exactly what they'd done and was furious they were finally facing the fallout. "Your struggle," I said quietly, "is not my responsibility. Your choices created your situation." Peter stepped forward, his large frame nearly filling the entire doorway, casting a shadow across the entryway like some ill omen. "Look, old man," he said, voice heavy with contempt. "Maybe you didn't think this through properly. Samantha's got expenses. She's got responsibilities. The kids, they need things." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't blink. "Kids," I said calmly, whose mother threatens to keep them from their grandparents when the money stops flowing. The words landed with precision, sharp, clean, and deliberate. Samantha's expression twisted as if the truth had struck her physically. Her fury ignited instantly. "Fine," she snapped, her voice cracking. "You want to play hardball? You'll never see your grandchildren again. Emma and Jake will grow up knowing their grandfather chose money over family." Once, those words would have been unbearable. Once, that threat would have cut so deep I'd have done anything to avoid it. But not now. Now they held no power over me. Now I stood on the other side of clarity, and from here I saw everything differently. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Not the girl I had tucked into bed, not the teenager I had driven to piano lessons, but the grown woman who now stood before me, weaponizing innocence, using my love as a leash. "Samantha," I said softly, my voice steady but firm. "That's not a threat. That's a blessing." Silence fell, thick and absolute. Samantha froze, blindsided. This wasn't the response she expected. Not the capitulation, not the plea, not the heartbreak she'd always been able to wring from me. Peter's mouth fell open, utterly dumbfounded. "You... what?" Samantha stammered, thrown completely off balance. "If you're the kind of person who uses your own children as bargaining chips," I said slowly, "then maybe it's for the best that they're not exposed to that kind of manipulation while they're still young enough to learn something better." Peter's face darkened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. He stepped in closer, too close. I could smell the aggression on him, could feel the heat radiating from his barely contained anger. "We know where you live, old man," he said, voice low and dangerous. "We know your schedule, your routines. You might want to reconsider your position before this gets ugly." Behind me, Jessica stiffened. I could sense her alarm, the tension rippling through her. But I didn't move, didn't even blink. "Are you threatening me, Peter?" "I'm just saying," he sneered. "Family relationships work both ways. You want to cut us off? Fine. But don't expect us to just disappear quietly." "Actually," I replied, "that's exactly what I expect." I let the pause hang heavy in the air before adding, "And if you choose not to disappear quietly, that becomes a matter for the police, not a family discussion." Samantha grabbed Peter's arm. Whether to restrain him or steady herself, I wasn't sure. But the gesture didn't soothe him. It seemed to ignite him further. "You think you're so smart," he hissed. "You think cutting off our money gives you power? Well, guess what? There are other ways to get what we need." "Oh, I'm sure there are," I said, my voice dipped in quiet sarcasm. "Like getting jobs, for example. I hear employment is still a thing. People have been doing it for centuries. You might give it a try." Samantha's face flushed a deeper red, her eyes blazing with fury. She shook with the weight of her unraveling illusion of control. "This isn't over," she spat, the words trembling with venom. "You'll regret this. You'll regret turning your back on your own family. Family doesn't abandon family. There will be consequences." I didn't flinch. "There already are consequences," I said, voice calm as ever. "You're standing in them." They stared at me, silent, stunned, caught between disbelief and dawning realization. They had come expecting weakness. They found resolve. They thought they still had control, but I had already taken it back. For 30 years, I had been their silent benefactor, their fixer, their lifeline. But as of now, the bank was closed, and so was the door. Without another word, Samantha spun on her heel, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement as she stormed back to their car. The sound was clipped, angry, every step a punctuation mark in her fury. Peter followed close behind, but not before turning to give me one final glare. A look meant to intimidate. It didn't. Not anymore. I stood in the doorway, unmoving, as their car revved louder than necessary, a juvenile display of defiance. The tires squealed as they pulled away, but the show fell flat against the silence they left behind. Only when their taillights had disappeared around the curve of the street did I reach for the door handle and gently close it. The click of the latch felt final. I turned to find Jessica standing a few feet behind me. Her face was pale, drained from the confrontation, but her eyes, Her eyes held something unexpected, something I hadn't seen in them for years. Pride. "We're going to need legal advice," I said, my voice steady now that the storm had passed. Evening fell with a quiet that felt sacred, the kind of stillness that wrapped around the house like a protective blanket, the kind we'd learned not to take for granted. After dinner, Jessica and I sat at the kitchen table, the soft clinking of cups the only sound for long stretches. She cradled a cup of chamomile tea between her hands, the rising steam curling into the air. I sat opposite her, nursing my second cup of coffee, staring into its depths like it might offer answers I hadn't yet found. The kitchen had always been our quiet harbor. It had seen our best decisions and our hardest ones. We'd sat at this very table when we debated whether to buy this house, when we mapped out our retirement, when we worried over Samantha's spending habits in her 20s. Now, once again, it became the stage for another reckoning. This time, the possibility that we might truly be losing our daughter. Not to distance, but to something deeper, something darker. Jessica broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "I keep thinking about when she was 8. I looked up. Her gaze was somewhere far off, eyes unfocused, lost in a different time. "Remember the Mother's Day breakfast she made for me? Burned toast. Orange juice was so much pulp I had to chew it." She gave a fragile smile. "But she was so proud." I nodded, the memory returning unbidden. Samantha in her pink pajamas, sleeves too long, standing on a kitchen stool so she could reach the counter. Her hair wild with sleep, her face glowing with excitement. That morning had been sticky, messy, and unforgettable. "She used to draw us pictures," I said, my voice softer now. "Little stick figures, us, holding hands. She always drew the sun in the corner of the page. I kept them in my desk at work for years." "I still have some," Jessica replied quietly, "in that old memory box upstairs." Her voice trembled, not from anger, but from a grief uniquely maternal. The grief of remembering who your child once was and wondering where that version of them went. "William," she said, her eyes meeting mine, "she's still our daughter, despite everything, despite today. That doesn't just go away." There it was, the words I had been waiting for all day. Jessica's heart had always bent toward healing, toward peace. Even now, after the threats, the manipulation, the emotional warfare, she still searched for the thread that might stitch it all back together. It was one of the reasons I had fallen in love with her. Her unshakable belief in redemption, in second chances, in the ability of a family, and even a broken one, to repair itself. I reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "Jess," I said softly, "she crossed a line today." Jessica didn't reply immediately, but the pause in her movements spoke volumes. Her teacup hovered halfway to her lips. Her shoulders tightened just slightly. "I have one more step to take," I added. Her hand lowered the cup to the table. "What kind of step?" she asked carefully, but the concern written across her face, but so was something else. Hope. Hope that whatever I was about to say might be the first brick in a bridge. Hope that this wasn't about retaliation, but resolution. Hope that I might still be choosing a way forward, not closing the door forever. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who had stood beside me through decades of Guacheoma struggle and loss, the woman whose heart still carried pieces of the little girl who used to bring her lopsided pancakes and hand-drawn crayon cards. And in that moment, I realized this next step wasn't just about Samantha. It was about us too. How could I explain to Jessica that bringing Samantha back wasn't the goal anymore? That door, the one we had kept open far too long, had finally closed. "Something permanent," I said, my voice low but certain. "Something that ensures this morning's chaos never repeats itself." Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in recognition. She knew exactly where my mind was headed. After all these years, she could still trace the map of my thoughts. "You're talking about changing the will, my mind," she said. It wasn't a question, it was understanding. She sat back in her chair, the words settling between us like an unwanted guest. For a long moment, she said nothing, only stared at her tea, her mind clearly turning over the emotional and moral weight of what that decision would mean. Because this wasn't just about money. This was a turning point, A quiet but definitive acknowledgement that we no longer believed our daughter could be trusted. That love, given freely, had been returned with entitlement and cruelty. Jessica finally spoke, her voice heavy but clear. The grandchildren, Emma and Jake, they'll be better off not learning that love can be bought, or that manipulation gets rewarded. I nodded and reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. The same hand that had held mine through 3 houses, 2 careers, and countless nights spent worrying about Samantha. Her fingers trembled slightly in mine, but she didn't pull away. Jess, I said, steadying my voice, what Samantha did today wasn't desperation. It wasn't a cry for help. It was deliberate. That snake wasn't an accident. Neither were the threats, the emotional landmines, the guilt tripping. That was cruelty, calculated and controlled. She meant every word, every tactic. Jessica closed her eyes, pained by the truth. But I had to say it. We couldn't afford to lie to ourselves anymore. If we don't draw this line now, Vanchan, I continued, we open ourselves to more of the same. We'll spend our retirement dodging crisis after crisis. We'll spend our marriage managing her chaos. We'll bleed financially, emotionally, until there's nothing left for us. Jessica exhaled slowly. Then she squeezed my hand, not hard, but with a quiet finality. Her thumb brushed gently across my knuckles, the same calming gesture she'd used for decades to steady me when things got hard. Only this wasn't like the other hard things. This wasn't a job loss or a health scare. This wasn't one of the growing pains of parenting. This was the end of something fundamental. The slow and painful recognition that our daughter had chosen a path we could no longer follow. Will it stop her? Jessica asked softly. If you go through with the changes, will she finally leave us alone? I looked at her, tired but resolute. It'll take away her reason to stay close. No inheritance to protect, no access to money, no leverage to use against us. And yes, I said, she'll move on, probably to someone else who hasn't yet learned to recognize the signs. But we'll be free. No more phone calls demanding help. No more guilt disguised as love. No more fear of what might come next. There was no joy in it, just necessity. Because at some point, protecting yourself stops being selfish and starts being survival. Jessica looked down, her expression softening into quiet heartbreak. I hate that it's come to this, she whispered. So do I replied. But I'm not going to let her destroy what we've built. Not our peace, not our marriage, and not the life we've worked decades to earn. Outside, the suburban evening rolled on like nothing had happened. Through the window, I watched the Hendersons walk their rescued dog, their silhouettes framed in the warm glow of street lamps. Somewhere in the distance, a lawn sprinkler clicked to life. Normalcy, simple, unremarkable, had never felt so precious. And inside that quiet kitchen, hand in hand, we made peace with the kind of decision no parent ever wants to face, but sometimes must. Mrs. Patterson was out front watering her hydrangeas, a quiet ritual in a quiet neighborhood. Normal people, living normal lives. Jessica's voice broke the silence. When will you do it? Tomorrow morning, I said without hesitation. First thing, I'll call Margaret Summers. She's been our attorney for 15 years. She'll know exactly what needs to be done to make everything ironclad. Jessica nodded slowly. It wasn't approval, it was acceptance. The quiet kind that comes when there's no fight left, only heartbreak. And if Samantha finds out, she asked. She will, eventually, but by the time she does, the legal protections will already be in place. Her anger won't matter. She won't be able to touch us anymore. I stood, gathering our empty mugs from the table and walking them to the sink. Behind me, I heard Jessica exhale, a soft, sorrowful sigh, not in protest, but in mourning. Mourning the daughter we had raised, mourning the family we thought we were. Tomorrow, I'd take that final step. Tonight, I would hold my wife and let her grieve. Margaret Summers' law office sat on the 3rd floor of a granite building downtown, solid, timeless, unshaken. Much like Margaret herself. The walls were lined with thick legal volumes, polished degrees, and photos of her 2 grown sons. She'd been part of our lives for more than a decade, through wills, property transfers, and the slow, careful paperwork of retirement planning. If anyone could help us draw a line between past and future, it was her. I sat across from her desk, a manila folder in my lap. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to calm. She slipped off her reading glasses. "William," she said warmly, "when you called this morning, you mentioned needing comprehensive legal protection. I assume this isn't about property taxes?" "No," I said. "It's about protecting what Jessica and I have left from our own daughter." Her brow furrowed slightly, but she didn't interrupt. I told her everything. The argument over the inheritance, the delivery of the snake, the threats, the blocked credit cards, the confrontation at our front door. Margaret listened, pen occasionally scratching across the page, her expression growing darker as the details piled up. "They know where we live," I finished. "They know our routines." Peter said as much. It felt like a threat. She set down her pen and leaned back in her chair, the full weight of the moment settling in. "William, this isn't just a family disagreement anymore. What you're describing, the pattern, the intimidation, it qualifies as harassment." "That's what I was afraid of," I said quietly, "and that's exactly why I came." She pulled a fresh legal pad toward her and clicked her pen. "Then let's begin. We'll address this on multiple fronts, starting with your estate plan." She flipped to a clean page. "You mentioned restructuring your inheritance?" "Yes," I said steady. "I want everything redirected to my grandchildren. Emma and Jake, their education, their future. Nothing to Samantha, not a cent." Margaret nodded, her tone professional but reassuring. "That's a wise decision, William, and legally it's simple to enforce, as long as it's documented correctly. We'll build safeguards into the trust, no loopholes, no back doors." Her voice carried the calm assurance of someone who'd seen good people taken advantage of far too often and had built the defenses to stop it. "She'll fight it," I said. "She'll scream, manipulate, guilt trip." "She can scream all she wants," Margaret replied. "But once the paperwork is filed, it's final. And if she escalates, there are additional protections we can put in place." I nodded slowly. The weight of what I was doing, of what I had to do, settled into my chest like stone. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. Because protecting your family sometimes means protecting them from one of your own. "We can create an educational trust fund," Margaret explained, her voice steady and precise. "One that ensures Emma and Jake's schooling, college, and any legitimate educational needs are fully covered, with zero access granted to their parents." She outlined the structure carefully. An independent trustee would oversee the funds. Money would be released only with verified documentation, tuition invoices, books, campus housing, academic programs. Not a penny could be siphoned off or redirected. "Samantha and Peter," she said plainly, "would have no control, no access, and absolutely no ability to manipulate the children's inheritance." "And Jessica?" I asked. "Her part of the estate?" "Fully protected," Margaret assured me. "The house, your retirement accounts, or her long-term care. Nothing changes. This only affects what would have gone to Samantha." And just like that, something in my chest eased. The tension of months, years really, of being emotionally blackmailed, lifted. No more phone calls in the middle of the night. No more guilt. No more walking on eggshells to avoid setting off another spiral. We were done enabling it. "There's one more thing," Margaret added, closing the file. "Based on everything you've described, I strongly recommend documenting every interaction going forward. Keep a record of any attempts to contact you, any messages, voicemails, letters, appearances, and especially any effort to involve the grandchildren." "You think this is going to get worse before it gets better," I said. "People who use fear, guilt, and threats," she replied softly, "don't usually respect boundaries, they challenge them." She was right. There would be rage, outbursts, accusations of betrayal. But none of that scared me anymore, because we weren't alone. Because this time, Samantha wouldn't be lashing out at two vulnerable parents. She'd be facing a system built to withstand the storms she creates. And for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Margaret's assistant entered quietly, a stack of documents in hand. As I signed each page, I felt it. The weight of 30 years of enabling, lifting with every stroke of my pen. This wasn't just paperwork. It was closure. It was freedom. Your home is now legally shielded from interference, Margaret said, reviewing the final pages. The restraining order should be approved by the end of business today. I nodded, steady and resolute. Court officers will serve both Samantha and Peter by tomorrow morning, she continued. After that, any contact with you or Jessica becomes criminal, not emotional. I stood, tucking the documents beneath my arm, and extended my hand, not just in gratitude, but in deep respect. This woman had helped me reclaim something I hadn't realized I'd lost. The right to peace. Outside her third-floor window, the city moved on. People crossing streets, buses rumbling past, ordinary lives unfolding in the rhythm we'd been denied for so long. William, Margaret called as I reached the door. You've made the right choices. Your family's safety comes first. Thank you, I said simply, and I meant it. Tomorrow, Samantha would find out. She'd learned that guilt no longer worked, that intimidation had failed, that the leverage she'd clung to had been permanently severed. And tonight, Jessica and I would sleep without dread. 2 days passed, 2 days of peace. Jessica and I slipped back into routines we hadn't realized we missed. Coffee in the morning without dread, walks in the afternoon without clutching a phone, dinner without tension or financial panic. It was the kind of quiet that feels like healing. On Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. It was Margaret. William, she said gently, they've been served. 2:15 p.m. this afternoon. Both Samantha and Peter have the restraining orders and copies of the new will. It's done. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I just sat, still, breathing. Outside, Mrs. Patterson knelt in her flower bed, coaxing tulips into bloom. Down the block, the Henderson kids raced each other on bicycles, their laughter echoing off the pavement. Life, real life, was moving forward. The papers were delivered? Jessica asked, stepping into the room. This afternoon, I replied. It's finished. She sat beside me and reached for my hand. We didn't need to speak about Samantha. Didn't need to speculate about her fury or whether she'd try to sidestep the law. Because this time, the boundaries were not emotional. They were legal, permanent, enforced. And for the first time in 30 years, we were free. I thought about the daughter I once knew, the little girl who used to draw stick figure families and surprise me with breakfast in bed on Father's Day. That child had grown into a woman who sent live snakes through the mail and threatened to use her own children as pawns. The change had happened slowly, so slowly that I'd spent decades explaining it away, excusing cruelty, forgiving manipulation, calling it love. But the woman who stood on my doorstep last week, snarling, demanding money, issuing threats, she wasn't someone I needed to protect anymore. The legal documents I'd signed had drawn a boundary that love alone had never been able to enforce. They got what they wanted, I murmured. I'm no longer in their lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Samantha had wielded access to Emma and Jake like a weapon. Do what I say, or you'll never see your grandkids again. Now, by her own hand, through her own threats, her own malice, she'd guaranteed the very separation she used to dangle like a punishment. She had also lost something far more concrete, any claim to the inheritance she'd worked so hard to manipulate. Emma and Jake, innocent in all of this, would still be cared for, their future protected by an educational trust fund, tuition, tutoring, books, all of it provided for without a single dollar passing through their parents' hands. Jessica squeezed my hand. Do you think she understands what she's lost? She will, I said quietly. The restraining order had changed everything. Now, even a phone call would be a criminal act. There was no money to chase, no inheritance to fight over, no reason to reach out, even in anger. And if she tried, it wouldn't be our problem anymore. It would be the police department's. I had been her safety net for 30 years. Every time she stumbled, I was there, writing checks, covering rent, paying off credit card debt, and gambling losses, telling myself that this time would be the last. It never was. Until now. Her last message to me didn't come in words. It came in a box. Heavy, silent, deadly. Everything she'd ever needed to say about our relationship, her rage, her contempt, her need to intimidate, was right there, coiled and venomous. A living metaphor for the years I'd spent trying to love someone who only knew how to threaten. But instead of driving me back into compliance, that snake drove me straight to Margaret's office and into the legal protections I should have sought years ago. Now, as the sun dipped low through our kitchen window, Jessica and I made dinner together, moving with the quiet rhythm of two people no longer weighed down by chaos we didn't create. No phone calls broke the silence. No urgent texts screamed financial disaster. No threats loomed over access to grandchildren. Just peace. The kind that settles over you after a long, exhausting storm. The kind you almost forget exists until it returns. Tomorrow we would wake in a home legally shielded from harassment. Our retirement savings would stay where they belonged, securing our future, not subsidizing someone else's self-destruction. Our marriage, once strained by constant crisis management, could breathe again. And me, I had finally reclaimed my role as a father, not by saying yes to every demand, but by saying no to being used. The emotional blackmail was over. The guilt was gone. In its place, legal boundaries, real consequences. The law didn't just protect me, it gave me back my life. And tonight, for the first time in decades, I would sleep soundly without wondering what tomorrow's crisis would cost me. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To hear what happens next in our collection of powerful true stories, just click the box on the left. Thanks for watching, and welcome to A Life Reclaimed.